if it goes live. Wait, holy shit. Wait, we're already live? What the fuck is that? Okay, well, anyway, what's up? I'm James, and this is the Slate Talk. This week I'm joined by Scott Barrett of FantasyPts, special guest, kind of a mid-season invitational here. Usually I'm joined by Pablo, my good friend and Paydirt guy, but this week decided to bring on Scott, who is a premier I know ball guy, to kind of inject a little bit of different takes into the pod. Usually we're very, very heavy on like the God, I'm so fucked up here because usually I have an intro video and I don't have an intro video right now. So I'm trying to post links. Anyway, injecting some takes that are a little bit more about like how guys should perform rather than GPPs, contest, stuff like that. So Scott, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. Excited to be here. Happy to connect with you. We had a blast last time we did this show. And always like picking your brain for, I really respect the way you look at things, which is a lot different than I. So hopefully this is a coming together where we're both made better for our differing individual strengths.
Yeah, and we usually are. One of the things, like I'm a pretty big I know ball guy when it comes to baseball, right? I'm just setting things up here, but I'm pretty good I know ball guy when it comes to baseball, and I mean I'm good enough when it comes to NFL. Obviously, I work with a lot of stats. I've built plenty of models in my life and done all this kind of different stuff. But one of the things that I am not super great at anymore is kind of getting into the nitty gritty and finding the gems in the rough per se. I'm really good at understanding guys who like have a role and have like a dedicated, here's what they do for a team. And I'm really good at understanding kind of the high level, like how teams perform, what teams to target, stuff like that. But when it comes to like, is Josh Downs good at football? Like, I don't know, maybe. I know that Bryce Young fucking sucks at football. I can say that with confidence. But like, there's a lot of other guys, right? That's where Scott is much better than me. So, this pod, we're going to try to keep this one a little bit shorter. Pablo's not on it, so obviously it's not going to go as long as it usually would because he rambles because he's an old man. But we're going to try to hit on most of the important spots for this slate. Luckily, this slate is not insane so far. We never fucking know what happens in the next 12 hours. But right now, it looks like chalk is mostly condensed around the mid-range. Pricing looks more appropriate than weeks past. Scott, I don't know how many of these shows you have watched from me and the other dudes at Paydirt, but pricing has just been atrocious on DraftKings this year. It's been the worst pricing that I have seen in maybe 6 years. And so that it's pretty much like killed a lot of contests. It's killed a lot of GPP weeks for me because you've just had to jam the chalk. So the pricing looks a little bit better. I don't know. Have you had a chance to kind of like think about the slate so far? Have you looked at anything yet?
Yeah, what do you mean the pricing is bad? Do you just mean it's loose?
Yeah. So, for instance, we have never seen this many quarterbacks available under $5,500 ever. Like outside of maybe 7 years ago or something like that, before they changed the pricing algorithm and made it so that backup quarterbacks had to be at least 5K. For some reason, they changed it in the last year and a half. So quarterbacks, too cheap. At least $1,000 too cheap. Like Lamar Jackson this week, 6,800. That's fucked up, dude. He should be like 7,500 at least. The other really, really bad one has been wide receivers. And wide receivers have been consistently about $1,000 underpriced down the band. Even when you look at the elite guys, like even JSN right now at 8,600, you could argue that's still $500 underpriced. Puka Nacua at 8,700. I mean, there were times years ago, back when he had the killer bees with the Steelers, Antonio Brown was 10K plus a couple weeks, right? So like these wide receivers are about $1,000 too cheap, right? Running backs have been getting better. Running backs is one of the positions where the backups have been auto priced basically above 5K. So that has been better, but still, even on the high end, it took them 9 weeks to get Jonathan Taylor up to above 9K. And he's basically been, I think that your term is Exodia. Like he's been insane this year. And then the worst defender is tight ends. You can play any fucking tight end you want. They're all underpriced. Every single one of them, at least 500 up to $1,000 underpriced. So when you have this loose pricing, what it does is it makes it so that people don't have to make tough decisions, and you can just kind of play the best plays across the board. Now, that's awesome for people who don't have fucking expressive issues like myself, but I like to build lineups with a story, and I like to find leverage off of really high owned plays. Scott, I don't know if I need to tell you this, but the chalk has kicked me in the face all year.
Yeah.
All year. And it's been because of the pricing. So the pricing looks better this week. For instance, Rico Dowdle at 6,300, that's still underpriced, but it's better than when he was 5,200. Like Achane at 7,400, that feels about right. You know, like James Cook, 7,500. These running backs feel about right. The wide receivers feel about right. So chalk is condensing around Dowdle at 40% owned. I expect him to be a little bit higher than that. But that's kind of what I mean is this week that there's no gimmies, right? The pricing looks about right for me. So do you have any thoughts kind of on like any guys who look significantly underpriced, guys who look significantly overpriced compared to what you would expect?
Yeah, well, I think Lamar Jackson is seriously underpriced. You know, I think he's the top quarterback of the slate, should be the highest projected quarterback of the week. He's only 6,800. So you're talking about quarterbacks being priced too cheap. You have Jacoby Brissett, who's averaging 22.5 DraftKings fantasy points per start. And he's only 100 more than the site minimum at 4,600. Like, yeah, clearly a great value, but it's also all the way at the top. Like, you know, Lamar Jackson, 6,800. He's averaging 26 DraftKings fantasy points per game over the last 2 seasons. So, clear mispricings there at the quarterback position. Running back Rico Dowdle, I think for sure should be probably 1,200 more expensive than he is. So
Yeah.
that's chalk that really makes me concerned. At least with Christian McCaffrey, you can be like, okay, he's God, but he's an expensive God, right? And even Achane, you know, you could quibble with touchdown upside or what have you, although he's for sure a great play. There's just, you know, the advantage of gaining ground on a third of the field if he does fail. And then wide receiver, Zay Flowers, I guess you could say is a little bit more boomer bust than he gets credit for. You know, I don't know that he's ever hit when he's chalk. He tends to hit when no one's on him. He doesn't stand out to me as a must play and an amazing play. I love Lamar, so I'm going to have exposure to him, but as a one-off, he's not someone who strikes fear into my heart. At the tight end position, I do think Trey McBride is really mispriced. I do think Sam Laporta is really mispriced. Some of these 3K tight ends are interesting. I don't think Kittle is a great play. I think he's very hurt. And so I think, you know, he's chalk that, again, doesn't scare me.
Why don't you extend on that on a little bit on Kittle? Because I know that you tweet out all the time about his advanced metrics. So I'm kind of surprised to hear that you're low on him.
Yeah, so I'm George Kittle's biggest fan. I think he's the most underrated player in football. I think he's potentially the most valuable offensive player, non-quarterback in football. Plenty of smart people agree with this. Max Toscano, remember the tight ends on Substack, agrees with this. The guy who does projections for Stochastic, DeColts, what's his name? He agrees with me on this. But yeah, the one interesting thing about Kittle, who has led the position in yards per route run in like 7 of his last 8 seasons, is he's hurt every single year. And Kyle Shanahan talks about him as though he's a literal superhuman. Like he's said, he's like, yeah, he has this brutal injury and, you know, he really should go on IR for the rest of the year. But because he's George Kittle, because he has Wolverine's superhuman, you know, healing abilities, he'll probably be out there next week, knowing him. But this is a brutal injury. He was quoted a couple of weeks ago with saying, by the way, that was a real Kyle Shanahan quote. Like he actually said that.
Yeah.
George Kittle said he had a full hamstring tear, which the
My
injury
God.
experts I talked to is like, if that's real, like he shouldn't even be walking, right? And so these guys have a tendency to exaggerate. With Kittle, maybe not. Just his track record, his history of what he's played through and played through at a really high level. And then the advanced metrics back this up. Since he returned from injury, he ranks second worst of 58 qualifying tight ends in average separation score. And this is like one of the best tight ends in football. So that shouldn't be the case. So I worry about the injury, especially when he's super chalky. He hasn't been productive at all, which might also be a Brock Purdy thing. Brock Purdy's not playing. So 18%, 4,500 versus Sam Laporta, 9%, 4,400. That's an easy pivot to me.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, especially because Washington's defense has just been a sieve. I think the George Kittle thing also is bared out in the expected fantasy points. Granted, he has not had that many games, but the expected fantasy points for him sticks out for me here. Have him projected for 12.66, which is fine. That would be in line with what we would expect him to be projected for if he was relatively healthy. But he's just not getting the kind of workload that you would want, even at just 4,500, right? That's still underpriced, I think, if you were going to consider him healthy. But I'm gonna err on the side of you here, because again, like this specific kind of thing considerably better than I do and considerably better than my models do. So you mentioned Trey McBride. I think that he is. It's hard for me to go up to 6K for him on this slate specifically because there are not as many values. And I think that if what you end up doing is going with Trey McBride, what you'll end up doing is let's consider a build here, right? A lot of people are going to be on Lamar Jackson, so let's slot in Lamar Jackson with Rico Dowdle, Zay Flowers, and then Trey McBride. What you end up with is like something like maybe $5,000 remaining per player. And it kind of pigeonholes you into the same kind of things that everyone else is going to be doing. You're probably only going to be able to afford one stud. You're going to have to play some shaky thing at defense. Your tight end position has been taken up by Trey McBride. It kind of, it makes it a little bit shaky. So I would prefer probably to go with Sam Laporta if I was going to eat ownership. On the other hand, I wouldn't mind going with, one of these cheaper guys that I think is way more shaky, obviously. But Theo Johnson, I think Theo Johnson is a pretty decent option. He's not gotten a price raise, really. He's still 3,800. And then Cade Otton is not a bad option. Hunter Henry looks especially attractive in terms of value. Are there any values that you're kind of into at tight end? And then we'll move on because I don't really care so much about tight end. But if we're not going to play the expensive guy, we got to play a cheap guy here.
Yeah. So that's just how it goes with tight ends, right? Like obviously, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta stand out to me as great plays, and they're fairly chalky. But if you don't play them, you stack them with your quarterback because that's really plus EV. They're highly correlated. It's an otherwise random, volatile position. And then if you don't do that, yeah, there's a ton of dart throw 3K range tight ends. Mark Andrews, Theo Johnson, Dalton Schultz, Juwan Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, any of those guys are fine. And just, I wouldn't say anyone stands out more than the rest.
One more take on tight ends from a ball knower. Is Colston Loveland good, or did he just beat up on a really bad defense?
Well, I think he's really good. But I think, yeah, it's the worst. It's the best possible matchup by far. And Cole Kmet got hurt in that game. Kmet will be back. My big thing about these Chicago tight ends is I just don't trust Caleb Williams, who's bottom 3 in accuracy, but also he struggles to get through his progressions. And so he tends not to just get to the tight end, which is going to be the second or third read. So I don't fully trust it, but I mean, 2%, he's a better play than 2%.
I think that absolutely makes sense. I was kind of arguing with RotoDoc with Kev on Twitter about Colston Loveland because he was like, "Oh, Colston Loveland has these incredible stats through these games." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's kind of put an asterisk next to the 58-yard touchdown that he got at the end of that game because he was tackled by 3 people and probably should have gone down." I know that it's not like, let's not remove everybody's best play and talk shit about them, but I wanted to hear some general thoughts on him from somebody who knows a little bit more about stats than I do. Let's talk a little bit about QBs. I agree that Lamar Jackson is just, I don't, at 6,800, he's going to be higher owned than Josh Allen. When I run ownership tomorrow, he's going to be the highest owned QB. I think that people will play Josh Allen because $7K for Josh Allen is still too cheap. And Miami is a good matchup for, upside. But I've heard a lot more chatter about Lamar Jackson. I think that people are more excited to play Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews rather than they are to play Khalil Shakur and Dalton Kincaid. I think that people are more interested in a bring back for Minnesota. There's Justin Jefferson on the other side, so it's going to boost ownership there as well, whereas people don't really feel like they want to play anybody except for Achane from Miami. So do you have – I think you have a lean towards Lamar Jackson between him and Josh Allen, but how do you look at those two since that's probably going to be a decision that you have to make this week?
Yeah, I mean, our projections guy thinks it's really close. Just Josh Allen's implied point total is 4 points higher than Lamar Jackson, so that's a really potent edge. To me, I really strongly I like Lamar a lot more than Josh Allen. I tend not to play Josh Allen unless it's a spot where the Bills really count on him to be Superman. Otherwise, they're very content to take their foot on off the gas and let it be the James Cook show. So I'm probably not going to end up with much Josh Allen at all, but Lamar Jackson really stands out to me. This is something I've been writing about every single week where it's like buy low on Lamar Jackson. I think he breaks leagues when he comes back. We don't really know how good or bad the Ravens defense is. Mm-hmm. If you look at all the numbers, they're bottom 3, but they did deal with like brutal injuries in the beginning of the year. Now they're a lot healthier. But like either way, like if this is a bottom 5 defense all year, Lamar Jackson is breaking leagues. But I think even a best case scenario for them, it's just an average defense, and Vegas thinks it's going to be close and competitive. And just he's been running circles around everyone else. Led all quarterbacks by 3 or more fantasy points per game last year. Leads all quarterbacks by 3 or more fantasy points per game this year. So I just think he's head and shoulders above anyone else, and I've been looking forward to a competitive game for him to go all in DFS. I won't go that far, but definitely going to have Lamar exposure. Like we said, Zay Flowers pops as a value. I like Mark Andrews, and I just really like Lamar.
Yeah, I think he's just a ridiculous play at 6,800. I mean, Justin Herbert was 6,800 like 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, come on, Lamar Jackson is Yeah. I mean, like Lamar Jackson at 6,800, you're telling me that you get Justin Herbert plus the possibility of 90 plus rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. I mean, that's insane value when you consider the price comparison there.
If I went in blind and like you're like, yeah, well, he's projecting to be 25% owned, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so
yeah, I think that this ownership should be flipped. Like I think that when the cards flip tomorrow, this ownership will be flipped.
Oh, you think almost it will be?
Yeah, almost for sure. Yeah. Just because I think, like I said, I think people like the game environment more. And even though we have that total, people are gonna here's what people are gonna do. People are gonna say, oh, Josh Allen's projecting for more ownership, and it's against Miami, and Miami it might not be a competitive game. Instead, I'm gonna play James Cook to take advantage of the Josh Allen ownership and play him with Lamar Jackson, who's lower owned. And a whole bunch of fucking people are going to do that because they're going to run it through their contest sims, whatever fucking site they subscribe to. And it's going to say that Lamar Jackson's a better play and James Cook's a good play on leverage. And then they're going to do that. And then lo and behold, James Cook's going to be 36% owned tomorrow for no goddamn reason. Lamar Jackson's going to be 25 and Josh Allen's going to be 10. And then everyone is going to say, well, what the fuck did we just do? Because that's how this works. That's what I think is going to happen. For me, when I am looking at the Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson thing, something that I do is I make a comparison. Jesus Christ, that's bright. I make a comparison of catchable air yards versus actual air yards and targets and stuff like that. And I kind of compile it together to look for upside. And this is basically just when I say upside, I'm looking at it in a way of what is like a team's upside in terms of their passing yardage in a game. And why I do that, obviously, is because I want to target teams that have a lot of upside. And when you look at this intuitively, it makes sense. Dallas, Kansas City, Chargers at the top, Las Vegas, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh at the bottom. Now, what I think is interesting here, because this is a full season buildup, is that Baltimore is right here, dead fucking slot in the middle. And then right below them is Buffalo. And Lamar Jackson has not been there for very long. So for Buffalo to be below Baltimore in upside, just from a passing perspective, obviously Josh Allen runs, but from a passing perspective, and for that to be without Lamar Jackson in the sample for the majority of the sample, that's an easy pick for me towards Lamar Jackson. The passing upside is just considerable. And I think that the only problem that I have there then is when we then go over to wide receiver, if you're going to play Lamar Jackson, do you feel like you have to pair him with Zay Flowers? And I kind of feel like yes. Or at the very least, if I play Zay Flowers, I feel like I have to play him with Lamar Jackson. Only because, like, if Lamar Jackson hits his ceiling, I suppose there's the short touchdown throws to Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, and like they do get their wide receiver 2s and 3s involved. But like, man, if that game really goes to the gills, it's hard for me to see Zay Flowers not getting there. So I feel like that correlation between Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers is important this week. And to be clear, I have not been a big correlation guy this year. I actually think that people went a little bit overboard with correlation last year, and we need to tone it back a little bit. But this is a correlation that is just really hard for me to ignore.
Actually, when I dug into the numbers, I didn't see Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson as being massively correlated together, but I did see that being the case for Mark Andrews. I think the way I'm going to play it is, single entry. I'm going to probably stack Lamar with both. But large field tournaments, yeah, I think you don't have to play Zay if you want to get a little unique. Or maybe you just don't play Lamar because, we've spent all this time talking about two quarterbacks, but there's really a lot of quarterbacks I like this week. I think there's a few more famous last words, but I think there's a few more quarterbacks I like above and beyond Josh Allen, maybe even throwing out ownership. Maybe. I don't know. I need to think that over more, but.
Well, let's jump back to quarterbacks then, because there was a quarterback that I wanted to mention, and that's Jackson Dart. I have Jackson Dart projected really, really well. He's kind of like a mini Danny Dimes. He's kind of like Danny Dimes before Danny Dimes got terrible. And I'm sure that Jackson Dart will also get terrible because that's what happens to New York Giants quarterbacks. But like at 5,700, he has the rushing upside and he has like some decent repertoire with his receivers, even though he doesn't have his alpha dog there. It's a shootout matchup with Chicago. The game could get sloppy. And he's only projecting for 3% owned. So I think that Jackson Dart's actually a really interesting play this week.
3% owned?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everybody's going to do it. I mean, look, Lamar Jackson's at 6,800 and Josh Allen's 7K. People don't need to go down that far.
So he is no worse than the second best quarterback play of the slate, and he might be the best quarterback play of the slate. He ranks fourth in fantasy points per dropback, behind only Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. He ranks fourth in fantasy points per start, behind only Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. All those guys are at least 1K more expensive. He is balling out at an insane level. He has a top 6 matchup on paper. You have to keep an eye on the weather Sunday morning, but and he's been rock steady, like cash lock, because he has that rushing floor. But I think in this matchup, there's certainly upside for more than that.
Yeah, I think he's a terrific play. And it's one of those things where my brain always is like, okay, if a quarterback is going to be chalky, how can I leverage them with their running back? Or vice versa. If a running back going to be chalky, how can I leverage them with their quarterback, with their stack? And the thing with Jackson Dart is I have no goddamn interest in playing Tyrone Tracy. I just don't. So I don't even, my brain goes there and I'm like, oh, it's Tyrone Tracy? Never mind. I'm just going to play Jackson Dart, especially if he's going to be low owned. My thing with that as well is like, we don't have that much value on this slate. So even though $1,000 is not considerable savings off of Lamar Jackson, it could be the difference between playing, a $5,500 wide receiver 3 and a $6,500 wide receiver 2, or moving up from, a Dowdle if you wanted to try to get off of some ownership up to an HN or something like that. So I think the Jackson Dart's a terrific play. I do think that his ownership is going to come up a little bit, just a tad, but I don't think he's going to be above 10% owned just because Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are going to take so much ownership. Are there any other quarterbacks? You said there were a couple that you wanted to note.
Yeah, just there's clear upside for Matthew Stafford, who's playing at a really high level. I think the stat I had was like he's scored at least 26.5 DraftKings fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 starts. Josh Allen's only done that twice all year. There's clear upside to the stack. Shootout potential. Kyle Shanahan actually historically owns Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, but that wasn't the case week 5. So there's clear upside there. I like that quite a bit. There's a few other quarterbacks too.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett you had mentioned is really cheap at 4,600.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites in part because it's such an easy stack with Trey McBride. He's really just laser focused in on tight ends every year of his career dating back to college. But I wouldn't fault anyone who, if you wanted to go unique, go with Marvin Harrison Jr. But yeah, I think he's a tremendous value. I think there's real upside there. Like I said, he is averaging 23.5 DraftKings fantasy points per start. That would rank 3rd best on the slate, but he's basically minimum price. So I think he's a great play. He gives you a unique build where you can get up to JSN and Puka, or throw CMC in there instead.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been doing, and one of the things that I've been hammering home this year is that if quarterback's under 5K, they're automatically in play, and it helps.
That's something I've noticed with like the true pros, Alex Baker and Utica. They are always DTF with these like super gross quarterbacks who are like insanely cheap, like the Spencer Rattlers of the world or the Marcus Mariotas of the world. And what do you think that is? It's just like no ownership, but the upside if it does hit because it's so cheap.
Yeah, so let me show you the reason why it matters. So the big thing here is that when you are considering a quarterback that cheap, you're not actually comparing them against other quarterbacks. Typically, what you're doing is you're actually comparing them against the rest of the field. You treat them as a flex play. So if there was a player that was $4,600 and was giving you a median of 16.85, automatically in play, just point blank, right? And you don't even treat them as a quarterback. You don't treat them as a correlation piece. You don't say, I have to play them with X, Y, or Z wide receiver. You say, if I could play this player at the tight end position, I would just slam them in like every single time. It's kind of like the Taysom Hill thing, right? Like when Taysom Hill was playing quarterback at $4,500 for the Saints, you just played him because he had so much upside for being at a scarce position and at the price that it just made a lot of sense. It's the same thing with quarterbacks where you compare them against what value can I get at other positions that may be good enough to beat this specific play. And when you look at it, so I parsed this down. This is only players who are $5,000 or less. And if we wanted to, we'd go all the way down to 46, right? And when you look at it this way, you basically have Jacoby Brissett, who projects for 16. You have George Kittle, who's the next cheap play, who is not a quarterback, projected for 12, and then Sam Laporta for 11. So you have a 4-point difference in median at players who are at the price of Jacoby Brissett or lower. When we had Mac Jones at 4,500 earlier in the year, I think it was maybe week 3, it was like Mac Jones projects for 16 fantasy points and then nobody else above 10. So it was just like he should have been like 35% owned. He was only 12 or 14% owned, I think, like that. But when you have that large of a disparity between price points, like within a certain price threshold, it just makes a lot of sense to just jam that player in. And the thing that you can do with quarterback that is also unique, because they have such a high floor, you end up plugging them in and you can just play them naked. Like, yes, you can play Jacoby Brissett with Trey McBride, but what you could also do is play Jacoby Brissett and then play, instead of playing Lamar Jackson, who's 6,800, play Zay Flowers with Mark Andrews and with Jacoby Brissett. And now what you end up doing is having all of the upside from Lamar Jackson, and then Jacoby Brissett, who you would think has a floor somewhere or a median somewhere within range of Lamar Jackson, right? And that would end up giving you enough to make up by going somewhere else with the extra $2,000. That $2,000 is the difference between a $5,500 running back and HN or Gibbs, right? Like it's a huge difference. So that's kind of the thesis behind it. When you have a quarterback that projects that much higher for under 5K, it's so hard to beat the value prop of just jamming them in and then just playing optimally everywhere else.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So we have been jamming quarterbacks under that price pretty much all year. And interestingly, we actually have a lot of quarterbacks under that price range this week. I mean, Jackson Dart projects really, really well as value, but then Jacoby Brissett at 4,600, JJ McCarthy, 4,900. That's too cheap. Mac Jones at 5K. That's still too cheap. Davis Mills has been serviceable at times. 4,500. Like you could probably play him too. But I think that with all of that, like you're either paying down or you're playing Jackson Dart or you're playing Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. That's how I look at this slate from a quarterback perspective. Let's hit some running backs because we need to make some decisions this week. Is Rico Dowdle going to bury me in the fucking ground with 200 plus rushing yards again? Or can I like try to pivot off of him this week?
I think he's closer to a lock button than a fade personally.
Wow. Yeah, I faded Monongai last week. Oof. Oh, that was brutal. I talked to I was talking to Elliot, the CEO of Fantasy Life, and I was letting him know, like, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to play Monongai this week. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to fall on the knife. I'm going to be that guy. And if I wake up in the morning a couple $1,000s poorer, then that's the reason why. And it was the reason why. Now, granted, he didn't actually, he wasn't like, he didn't even find his ceiling, Scott, and he still buried me like with 200 plus rushing yards. So Dowdle at 6,300, I think he's a terrific play. Carolina, I don't think Carolina is a good team, but they're better than New Orleans, especially starting basically a practice squad level quarterback. Carolina's defense has been decent, and New Orleans is one of the fastest paced teams in the league. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue that pace with their quarterback change, but it's hard for me to see Rico not getting the volume and not getting the scoring opportunities at 6,300 to make him just an insane play.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I don't know. He scares the crap out of me. Maybe I just don't have the stones you have.
Well, here's the thing. I'm just happy to lose money if it gives me an opportunity to make money. I always make jokes that like, fuck it. I can't take it with me, so I might as well gamble with it. Outside of him, he's projected for 40% ownership. He's going to be higher than that. He's going to be 50 something percent. I'm going to have to boost him. Outside of him, when we look at the other ownership here, Achane at 29%, Christian McCaffrey at 29%, James Cook at 20%, and that's pretty much the high-end chalk. I could see Kyron Williams getting there. I don't think people are interested in Travion Henderson anymore. Maybe they are. I don't know. But Quinshon Judkins is probably the only other guy that I've heard some chatter about. So at running back, outside of Dowdle, who should I focus on here?
I don't know. I think ownership's doing a pretty good job. That's about where I'd rank them. I don't think they're quite on the level of Rico Dowdle. You could fade McCaffrey because he's really expensive. He's also a god, but it's an expensive god. James Cook, volatile, boomer bust. He doesn't have a reception since late September. And so, yeah, I think ownership has just done a really good job at the running back position. I think a lot of the pros, even the more contrarian run ones, are kind of just eating the running back chalk and trying to get unique elsewhere. And And so yeah, I don't really have a unique take, I think, on any of those guys. But yeah, there are some good under the radar plays. Quinshon Judkins, Travis Etienne, David Montgomery, etc. So, um, I don't think they're significantly worse than a James Cook or Kyron. So you have that in your arsenal as well.
I can buy that. I'm fine with just eating running back chalk this week. I think it's not like previous weeks. The thing that I get worried about is backup running backs being thrust into starting roles. There's usually just such a massive drop off of efficiency, and they face more stack boxes, and they don't get the same opportunities. Like it's just something that I'm always wary of. Granted, it fucking crushed last week, but we've seen plenty of times in the last couple of years where it didn't. So this is not that. Right? Like we have all starters. Kyron, James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, HN, Dowdle, who should be a starter and was a starter last year for the Cowboys. It's not like he's not used to the role. Pretty simple at running back. I think we can probably just move on. The only thing that I would say is there are opportunities here with like James Cook. If Josh Allen is really going to be that heavily owned, I'm more interested in the James Cook side. I do think that Derrick Henry at 10% owned is probably under-owned here. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be really highly owned. So I have a little bit of interest from a leverage standpoint on James Cook and Derrick Henry, but it's purely a leverage thing. I wouldn't be playing Derrick Henry if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson being like 30% owned. So I think we're good to move on to wide receiver.
Yeah, I'll just say that was my note on Derrick Henry is, I'm going to have a lot of Lamar Jackson, and then I'll have a lot of Derrick Henry on my non-Lamar Jackson lineup. So I like that.
Yeah, I always write up in the showdowns whenever there's a game that is on a showdown for Baltimore. I'm like, okay, just make the rule one of Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry, and try to get splits of both, because one of them is probably going to destroy. So just find your path there. Let's see. So let's move on to wide receiver and then close things out. So wide receiver, currently the ownership is on Zay Flowers, projecting for the most ownership, 35%. And then JSN at 33, Puka Nacua at 28, Amon-Ra St. Brown 26, and then Khalil Shakur at 22, with Igbuka at 19. That's pretty much all the chalk overall, and then it's pretty spread out outside of that. I'd say that Zay Flowers, I really only want to play him with Lamar Jackson. I think that if Lamar Jackson goes off, then Zay Flowers can be carried along with him, but I don't really want to play 35% owned Zay Flowers by himself. JSN, Puka Nacua, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously they're studs. You can just play them with whoever you want. But then the other one, the red thumb here is Khalil Shakur. I don't think I can play chalk Khalil Shakur. I just don't think I can.
Does he have a ceiling? If he does, I haven't seen it, so I think that's a pretty easy fade.
Yeah, his ceiling, I have a ceiling for 24.98. Which is like obviously way lower than any of the other guys that he's around in ownership. Granted, he's cheaper. He's 5,100. But even if I was going to play Josh Allen, I'd probably play Dalton Kincaid. I'd probably play like a tight end.
He's ever hit 24.8 DraftKings fantasy points in his entire 55 game career.
Well, that's not true, because he for sure fucking buried me one showdown slate. I remember that. I think he had like 30 fantasy points or something, some showdown slate, and he was, of course, very highly owned for no reason.
Well, it hasn't been in the last 2 years, I'll tell you that.
Okay, fair. Very fair. Igbuka at 20% owned. That one is interesting. Expected fantasy points do not like Igbuka because he's gotten a lot of his production from outside of the red zone, and expected fantasy points is much more fragile stuff inside the red zone. So is Igbuka real? Like, is he real?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think the XFP stuff matters too. I mean, it's just, we saw last year Chris Godwin smash as the wide receiver 1, and then we saw Mike Evans smash as the wide receiver 1 when Godwin was out, and then we saw Kate Otten smash as the wide receiver 1 when both were out. And Igbuka was top 5 in fantasy points per game the first 5 weeks, then he picked up an injury, and the production hasn't been there, but 12 targets, 9 targets, the volume has, and he's off the injury report following the bye, so he should be healthy. But this was a point I debated with one of our writers, Nick Spinola. New England forces teams off of their first read at the second highest rate in the league. So I like Igbuka this week. He has a different angle. He likes the pivot to Tez Johnson and Kate Otten instead.
Tez Johnson does show for a little bit of ownership as well. I know that people are into this Tampa Bay side. Okay, so for me, I mean, mostly this slate just comes down to who you want to stack. When I look at the stacks range of outcomes, the Rams project is by far the highest median. Stafford plus Nakua plus Adams projects for 57. Obviously, it is also the most expensive, 22.9. Then we have Detroit stacks.
That's a bit expensive, that double stack. I'm surprised it's that. Oh wait, are you saying optimal or ownership?
I'm saying that's the highest. Well, that's the highest. The median is 57 on that. That's the highest median for any combo of 3 per people for any stack. The ownership is projecting for around 32% ownership. It doesn't project for the highest ownership. After that, we have Detroit and then Seattle, Tampa Bay, the regular guys. But one of the ones that does show up here is Arizona, which speaks to your point of Jacoby Brissett plus Trey McBride, and then Marvin Harrison being a cheap, effective stack. Just as a last thing before we close things out and I make you do some rapid fire stuff here, are there any stacks that you're super into, like just from macro level?
Yeah, I like for small field Lamar and Zay and Andrews. I like Dart and Slayton. I like Jacoby and McBride. I like May with Diggs and Kyle Williams.
Ooh, Kyle Williams. That's a good one. That's a good pick.
Yeah. Min price is 0% ownership. No Keishawn Boutte. I don't know. There's more than that. You could find it in my slate breakdown, but yeah, those are the ones that jump to mind right now.
Sick. Okay. Well, let's do some rapid fire here. So I want to go position by position, and I want you to tell me who you think is going to be the best value and who you think is going to be the worst value. So we're going to start with quarterback, and I'm just going to ask you, okay, who's going to be the best value? Who's going to be the worst value? Ready, set, go.
Oh, just of all of them?
Yeah, just go for it.
The best value is one of Lamar, Dart, Jacoby. I would go Lamar.
Okay. Who's going to be the worst value?
Jeez.
I did not tell him I was going to be doing rapid fire, so he's completely caught off guard here.
Could be. Oh, jeez. Could be Caleb.
You're going to say Caleb? All right, cool. So best value, either Lamar Jackson, Jackson Dart. Worst value, Caleb Williams. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to running back. Best value at running back, worst value at running back. Who do you have as the best?
Rico Dowdle.
Easy answer. Who's the worst?
You know what? Fuck it. Let's get spicy. Travion Henderson.
Ooh, yeah, good. Love that.
I mean, so he pops as a top 5 value for us. I just don't know that he has the touchdown upside to be like relevant in drawing double-digit ownership.
I kind of feel like he sucks.
I mean, like that's what we were saying for 9 weeks, right? So they wouldn't give him the ball unless everyone else is hurt.
I mean, when you've got 2 different practice squad guys coming up to take reps from you, I just don't know if you're good.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit wide receivers. Who is the best value at wide receiver this week?
Probably JSN.
JSN. Who's the worst
of these names? Justin Jefferson. Fuck it.
Ooh, love that. Justin.
I mean, it's a great schematic matchup for him, but like something I've ranted about is just like if you look at their last 12 games together, Jefferson's averaging only 0.8 fantasy points per game more than Addison, who is 2K less. So if you just look at it within that frame, or the easy answer, the less spicy one would be Wan'Dale Robinson. He does have a good slot funnel matchup, but I don't know that it's real now that they have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
All right. Let's move on to tight end. So for tight end, best value.
Best value would be probably Trey McBride. Worst value we'll say is Kittle. We'll say he's hurt.
Perfect. All right, cool. Well, this has been great. Much different format than we usually do, but I wanted to hit on more of kind of like the micro stuff because I had you on. I don't get to have you on very often. So for those of you who do not know who Scott Barrett is, Scott Barrett's CEO of FantasyPts, which is just a terrific site from a data perspective, from an editorial perspective, from a media perspective. Really, really good stuff over there. If you have not checked them out, you absolutely should. Also, check out stuff over at Paydirt. I didn't show off the subscription stuff like I usually do, but I absolutely should do that. So I'm going to bring the screen back up. Fight me if you want to fight me about it. Oops. There we go. So subscription over at Paydirt are $40 a month or $35 a month for just NFL. There's also year-long options, $240 until the end of the NFL season. You can also get weekly subscriptions for $20 a week or daily subscriptions for $5 a week. You really should come over and try things out. Full set of tools, everything for a whole bunch of different sports, NBA, NFL, NHL, experimental stuff, all that kind of stuff. If you enjoyed this, then, give me a follow, give me a like, go follow Scott. I'm sure you already are, but follow me over on Twitter. And if you have any questions, then feel free to hit me up anywhere. I'm always happy to chat, especially in the Discord. You can find the link over at Paydirt. Otherwise, Scott, you got anything on your way out?
Nope. Let's win some money this week. That'd be sick.
God, that would feel so good. That would feel so good. All right, cool. Thank you so much, Scott, and I will talk to you later, man.